Hi everyone, thanks for joining us with the Midwest Arts Council. Today we're going to be teaching a Safe at Home program brush calligraphy lettering series of 4 different classes. Today's class we will learn what supplies you will need, how to hold a brush pen, basic strokes, and lowercase letters. We'll even do a small project at the end. Brush calligraphy is pretty neat. You can do all sorts of different projects with it. You can just write special notes. You can do different cards. You can make all sorts of signs and headings. There's so much you can do with brush calligraphy. The next couple classes, we're going to do 4 different classes. We're going to teach uppercase letters and symbols and different lettering techniques in the future classes. So first of all, we're going to go over the different types of supplies that we need. I guess traditionally brush calligraphy is done with paintbrushes of all sorts of different types. You can use watercolor or ink, but we today are going to use markers. Now, they are called dual tip brush pens. There's lots of different types out there. There's even small pens and metallic brush pens out there, but we're just going to use the large brush pen. It's called a dual tip brush pen, and all that means is it has one end that kind of looks like those paint brushes, and the other end is a fine tip, which is kind of nice for certain projects that you want to get some details in there. Next, we're going to need paper. You can use lined kind of diagonal paper like this one. You can also use standard loose leaf if you want those lines for guidance, or you can just use plain paper. Doesn't really matter as long as you have some paper, and I guess paper that doesn't bleed or make the ink run. The third thing that we'll need is some sort of hard, plain surface, nice and smooth, that won't cause the pen to bump as we go along. So the next thing we're going to go over is how to hold a brush pen. The first thing is it's a little different than how we hold normal pens. We don't hold it as low as you would with a normal pen. You can hold it 1 inch or 2 inches higher. And then we also hold the pen, we don't hold it straight up and down, we hold it at a 45-degree angle so that we get kind of the nice different, like the skinny lines going up and the thicker lines going down. So that way you get the definition between the 2 different strokes that we'll be going over in just a moment. So I guess before we begin, I'll show you what we're going to learn today. We are going to, first of all, learn some basic strokes, the foundation of every letter, and then we're going to move on to learning actually how to do lowercase letters. Please feel free to pause this video at any time, just so you can practice each letter as we go. So before getting into how we do the basic strokes, I did want to go over exactly how to put pressure on your pen. So the very tip of the pen is how you get your really skinny, we call them upstrokes. And then using more of the middle of the pen is how you get your thicker strokes. So you don't want to be pushing down straight down on your pen because that will damage the pen. So using just the tip of your pen is how you get skinnier strokes, and using more of the side of the pen will get your thicker strokes. So I just wanted to go over that first, just so you know the difference of how to use the different, I guess the thicker part of your brush pen versus the thinner part. So the tip is for upstrokes and the side of the pen is for those downstrokes. So the first stroke that we're going to learn is the small upstroke. So that would be going about halfway up. Now this is cursive writing, so it does take practice if you're not used to it, but it is quite beautiful once you get to learn how to do cursive. You can just do printing with these brush pens, but we're going to do the cursive version of brush lettering today. So for a small upstroke, you just, with very little pressure in that 45-degree angle, just kind of move the brush upwards. Now, what I would recommend is pausing this video and practicing your full line until you're kind of comfortable with that movement. The next stroke that we're going to learn is the small downstroke. So that would be starting from the middle of this kind of top section and moving down. And so you have the small downstroke, and again, we would recommend practicing that over and over. When you combine the letters, you get something like this, like an I. So we will kind of combine the letters over time, and this is the foundation of most lowercase letters. The next letter or stroke we're going to learn is the large upstroke, very similar to the first one, and we're just going to start at the bottom and with light pressure bring it all the way up. Again, pause this video and practice that as much as you can. We will move on to the large downstroke, again with that 45-degree angle, and I'm holding the pen fairly high. We're going to do a large downstroke. So if we were to combine those, we would make a letter like an L. So the next stroke we're going to learn, and there's a lot of different styles on how to do brushed calligraphy, but this is a combination stroke. So we're going to combine kind of like the first small up and down strokes with a curved stroke. So this is making it a little bit harder, but we're going to do that first, kind of like that I. But then we're going to add in this curve. So it's kind of a non-stop stroke that we're going to do. An example of this stroke would be something like an N, where you combine both of those strokes. So again, we're going to go that small upstroke, big downstroke, and then the curved stroke. So it's hard to get used to, but again, the curved stroke would just be going up to that middle line and the top portion of our page and bringing it down in one consistent motion, changing pressures. So light upstroke, heavier downstroke. The next strokes that we're going to use is another type of combination strokes. We're going to do small and larger loops. So an example of a loop, I guess one kind of version of a loop could be sort of similar to this I, where we would go up and then there's a tiny little upstroke and a bigger downstroke. We'll practice that letter soon, but that's sort of a curve. But the loops are more like O's and P's and J's. So we would do the up motion like we did at the very beginning. We're going to go down, but a little bit on a curve, and then up again, and then loop it off to make an O. So there's a couple different curves and loops in there. So again, we would go up, down, bring it up lightly, changing the pressure, and then pushing down again. So there's different places we're pressing down. So the harder pressure is here, and here, and the lighter pressure is the upstrokes. So always remember when you're doing upstrokes to lift the pressure on your pen. The next larger loop we're going to learn, we're actually going to go down beneath this section, like how a P or an F or a J would be. So this kind of looks like a J, but we're going to do that small upstroke, and then we're going to do a downstroke but go below the line. So we're going to go down, going to lighten the pressure on the curve, and then we're going to bring it back up. So an example of this, I guess the second part would be more of the closure. If I was making like a P or a Q, it would be making a kind of a backwards C. So light pressure going up, hard pressure going down, or not hard, kind of pushing down a little bit more, and then light coming up again. So to put that all together, it would be light going up, harder pressure going down, light on kind of coming up, and then we go down again. And I like to finish my P's with a little loop at the end, and everyone has different ways of doing their letters. Now we're going to move on to practicing lowercase letters, and I'm going to go through them kind of one at a time, but fairly quickly. But again, just pause the video as you go along, and hopefully we can get it. There might be something like this available that kind of teaches you how to go up and down. Anytime there's an arrow going up, again, that's light pressure, and anytime there's an arrow going down, it's harder pressure. So there are some practice sheets out there that we can use to keep an eye on, but eventually you shouldn't need practice sheets. It's a kind of like cursive writing, but just remember every upstroke is gentle pressure and every downstroke is a little bit harder pressure. Not hard because you don't want to damage the pen, but harder. All right, so we're going to start with an A. Now, when you're combining words, they typically have these little tails on them, so we will be learning them with the tails, but if you were starting a word with a letter that has a tail, you don't have to add these. But A has that upstroke. And then it has a curve like a C, and then you kind of continue bringing it up and then finish it. So again, that's the upstroke, curve downstroke, and then that upstroke again, and then the harder pressure, lighter pressure. A B, there's so many different ways of doing lowercase b's. My favorite way is probably not the proper way, but you would have that tail, you would go up with light pressure, down with heavier pressure, and then I like to make it almost like a printing B. I think the standard B that you would make would be going like this. It's nice too, whichever you prefer. So again, with both of these, lighter upper pressure, harder down pressure, lighter upper pressure, curve that and go down with harder pressure, and then gentle pressure again. The next letter we sort of already saw, so this is a C. The next one is a D. So again, I'm adding these tails, but you can skip them if you want, or when you're combining letters. I usually will just continue this upstroke and then do a downstroke. So I'll do that one again just so you can see it. Upstroke, downstroke, and then that downstroke again after we did that upstroke. And E, there's two different ways of doing an E. You can do it in one continuous motion with the upstroke and the downstroke, or a little bit harder, but sometimes a little nicer. You can go up, and then from here, I would turn the angle to almost like a printing E again, and then that downstroke and then upstroke again. So that one again would look like this. Sometimes my pen skips. The next letter is F. F, again, is many different styles of doing it. I find the easiest one is kind of not quite following the rules, but you have your upstroke, and then you would go all the way to the top, downstroke all the way down, bring it up with a lighter upstroke, and then finish it. So that one's a little bit more challenging. So upstroke with gentle pressure, harder pressure, and then ups, kind of that lighter pressure upstroke, and then finish it. The next letter is a G. So we have that upstroke, your C, and then from here we would go down, around and up. So again, light upstroke, harder pressure downstroke, harder pressure downstroke. I guess there's an upstroke in there, and then harder pressure downstroke, curve it around, and then an upstroke. The next letter is an H, one of my favorite letters. It's just, I don't know, I find it very pretty. So you have a larger upstroke, and then curve it around to that downstroke, straight down following that kind of angled line. Then you have an upstroke and then a curved downstroke. An I, one of the simplest letters, so we have the upstroke, gentle pressure, and then the downstroke, harder pressure. I tend to, I think it's called bouncing the letters a little bit, where you go below and above the line. I don't follow the rules in using these lines 100%, but they're a general guideline. We're going to add a J because I missed that one in the practice sheet, or the sheet we were working on. So a J would have the upstroke, the heavier downstroke, a curve going up, and then the longer upstroke with the dot. The next letter is also a very pretty letter, a K. Took me a while to find a K that I liked, but what I would do is a large upstroke, and then that large downstroke, and then we would do a mini kind of loop, and then, so it's changing pressures a little bit. So we go little upstroke, pressure with the small downstroke, and then pressure again with another downstroke. So it changes it a little bit. The L we sort of saw earlier, the light pressure large stroke, upstroke, and then the harder pressure downstroke. An M, hopefully we have enough space for this. We can do it with kind of continuous bumps. This can be tricky. Another way of doing an M would be combining the upstroke with a curved stroke. So forget that one. But you do an upstroke, the small upstroke, a small downstroke, and then adding a two curve. So it's whatever style you like more. All sort of the cursive lettering style, but there's different ways of doing M. So there's an all curved one and kind of the more printed version of the letter M. The next one would be an N. So again, we have the two different ways, the small upstroke and making it two bumps, or you can do that flatter first line like a printed N and then the curved second one. The next letter is an O, and we sort of saw that one earlier. And you kind of make that C motion and then the loop on top. The next letter is a P. The P, again, we sort of saw it earlier, but we have that small upstroke, and then we have the larger downstroke, a loop with lighter pressure, and then we curve it and have harder pressure downstroke, and then I like to finish off with a little loopy. The next one is a Q. Qs are a little bit tougher, but it's sort of the opposite of the P. We have the upstroke, we have the C shape with the lighter pressure, harder pressure, lighter pressure. Then we have the long downstroke, kind of curve it up to do the upstroke, and then finish it off with a little tail. R, so many different styles to do R's, but my favorite is the upstroke. I like to go a little bit above the line and do a loop, and then the downstroke. It doesn't even have to follow the lines perfectly to get that R shape that you like. S is sort of similar with the R with the loop on top. I like to go a little bit above the line and then do an S shape like that. So it's a little bit more complicated. So the upstroke, a little loop with harder pressure, and then that downstroke, curve it with a little bit of an upstroke in the tail. A T would be that large upstroke, large downstroke, little tail, and then you can cross it however you like. I like to add a bit of a curve to mine, but you can do it straight across, whatever style that you like. The next letter is a U, so small upstroke. This is a continuous curve, but it's upside down. So we do the downstroke, upstroke, kind of like an I, but you would keep going, and then you would do another downstroke. A V, lots of different styles of doing V's, but you have the upstroke, we have the downstroke, and I like to do it kind of like the R and the S, a little bit above that middle line on the top portion. The next one's a W, so it's kind of like combining the U and the V. So we would go upstroke, downstroke, upstroke with a curve, downstroke, upstroke with that curve, and then the loop at the end. So to do that in one continuous motion, we would get it looking like this. Then we have the letter X. This is another tricky one, but it takes a little bit of practice. It's an upstroke with a curve on top, with more pressure going down. So it's kind of like an extended N loop. And then I usually would just take the pen and a gentle upstroke to make it an X. So that's kind of the X motion. Y is a very pretty letter. Lots of different ways of doing Ys, but this one will be an upstroke, and then the downstroke. So we have the upstroke with light pressure, downstroke, kind of like that U, and then we add like the tail of a P to it as well. So heavier downstroke, lighten it up on your curve, and then a lighter upstroke. And then the last letter is a Z. You can do it however you want. The traditional cursive way would be the upstroke with a downstroke like an N, and then kind of like a half bump with a continuous downstroke like a P, and then you would bring it up. You can do it however you want. This I find kind of flows a little bit better than some Zs, but however you want to do it. So combining letters is also a challenge. There are some practice sheets out there that you can trace and then practice on your own paper. But the tails of the first letter usually can be the entry of the second letter. So if I were to pull out the H that we did, this upstroke would be the beginning of our E in making the word hello. So if we were to do that separately, we can write hello with our large upstroke, downstroke, and then that upstroke again with that curve. And there's our little tail, but that's going to be the start of our E, kind of like how you would do cursive. So basically with brush lettering, it's cursive, but changing the pressure of your pen and holding your pen a little bit differently too. So then we would make our E that we practiced, then we would do the L. Double letters can be a challenge. So that can be something to practice too. A lot of words like happy or hello have those double letters, and trying to make them sort of consistent. And then the O. So next we're going to do a small project. We're just going to make a little card. You can use any type of paper for this, and it's going to be kind of like a birthday card. This one says it's your day. You can make it look like however you want. I made a thank you card a long time ago that I never gave away, and it has a little oak leaf on it, and it says thank you. So there's so many different things you can do with brush lettering. So I'm going to make this one a little bit colorful. I might use a red and a blue pen. So I'm going to start with making that I. So we do the I. It's a little bit harder when you don't have the lines. So you make it as straight as you can. Upstroke to make a T. Instead of dotting it with an I, I'm going to dot it with a heart. Maybe not the nicest heart, but that's okay. I'm going to cross my T with a squiggle. I am going to make a little apostrophe, and then I'm going to do that S. You could write whatever you want, but we're just going to do a little card here. And then I'm going to dot that exclamation point with a heart as well. The last thing that I'm going to do is just add some color to it. You do not need to do this, but we're going to make little strokes that I'm changing the pressure as I go. So I'm going to start kind of heavy and then lighten up at the end. And it just makes it doesn't even have to change pressures, but it just kind of brightens it up a little bit. I'm going to do that down here as well. Just makes it it's like confetti. It makes it a little bit more exciting. So that's the card. Simple little birthday card, but a nice little starter project for today. Well, thank you for joining today's class with the Midwest Arts Council. Next week, we are going to learn uppercase letters. They kind of look like this. The next week, we're going to learn numbers and symbols. And the following week, we're going to learn different techniques like making letters look a little bit more 3D or making letters with a couple different colors. So there's a few different things we can try over the following weeks. So hopefully we see you then, and thank you so much.